huge sickness from which they have no whatsoever ability to alleviate the pain, or people who are currently suffering from crippling physical injuries that they have taken on because they don't have proper safeguarding information or technology, do not have the ability to like contemplate whether or not they're in a position where like, you know, their God is giving them something that is gracious, right? The second thing to point out though is that it also is just a physical incapacitator. That is to say, like any type of injury that you have necessarily reduces your ability to just do any type of activity that involves like net pleasure. That is to say, even if you're doing things that you do enjoy, having the existence of pain will always create a huge net negative on that experience. These things necessarily mean that there's a clear and obvious impact that is guaranteed in this round that already outweighs many of the other higher level impacts that the other teams are trying to talk about. Opening?
Yeah, you proved that some people's hands hurt when they fish. We explained to you that everyone's brain, due to the hedonic treadmill and never-ending comparison, leads to mental pain that also motivates you to do jobs that do physical pain too.
So my argument is that the reason why we can even sit here and have this debate about why we are so nihilistic and sad about the fact that, like, you know, we might not be able to achieve the best possible future is the fact that we are not constantly in crippling starvation mode. We're not constantly thinking about like whether or not I can have my next meal. And we're not constantly like thinking about whether or not like I'm going to die from the fact that my hand got cut off because I thought that was like fishing equipment, but it turned out not to be like proper fishing equipment, right? So the second thing then is social structures. I think what Matt explains to you here is that the link from the necessary pain that you feel is likely one that leads to social structures that are going to be horrible. And now this is where, you know, we go into the speculatory side of the round, where we explain to you why it is structurally most likely that these are not going to be collaborative or socially amicable societies. The reason why this is so is because of the pain that you feel from hunger, the pain that you feel from resource constraints, and the irritability that comes along with feeling chronic pain from things that you're simply unable to fix, even though the vast majority of the modern world can. All of these things necessarily mean that it is unlikely that the society that is created here is likely going to be one that is solely collaborative. The reason why is because when it comes to situations that are that are resource constrained, they're necessarily going to be overloaded by biological instincts of self-defense. The fact that you need to prioritize yourself in order to live over prioritizing any type of collaborative society with those around you. And the response that they tell us here is quite good, right? They're just like, oh, like, you know, the indigenous peoples have oftentimes been able to hunt very well. The issue then is what modern technology allows you to do is hedge against accidents. It's the fact that, for example, when you don't properly preserve your food, it might mean that half of your tribe dies over the winter. It might mean that because one of your most prominent hunter-gatherer passes away, all of a sudden half of the people no longer get proper access to food. It might mean things like oceans, suddenly being overfished. Now I know that you get access to basic sustenance, so we will say that you basically are alive, but that possibly might mean that you barely have enough sustenance to even live any type of a meaningful existence whatsoever that is not entirely dominated by the pain that you feel from the crippling hunger because you simply don't have access to food, and not to mention the various other harms that you might feel. Now I'm going to deal with CG before that chair.
To claim that physical pain is inherently more incapacitating than mental or emotional pain is to disavow the narratives of mental illness sufferers that we know and take to be true.
Okay, I would say that in very many circumstances, there are going to be physical pains that are totally incapacitating. I do agree that there are some subsets of cases where mental illnesses can be incapacitating, but we know for a fact that physical incapacitation is uniformly true for all individuals, right? So what does closing government tell us then? They basically give us this pretty this argument about spirituality that basically isn't really impacted, right? I want to point out a few key flaws here. The first thing that they say is they get spirituality because you are not going to doubt this spirituality because you don't have enlightenment and you don't hear a lot of the discourse that happens in the modern world. But then they also say that this spirituality is important to us because we're going to be able to access benefits like talking to my ancestors. I really just don't think that these people on the island are actually able to hear their ancestors. And insofar as they try to and can't hear them, I feel like that's a huge reason to doubt this. But secondly, even if we accept them at their best case and this spirituality does exist, why is it even necessarily good? There's never a clear reason why doubt is something that is inherently bad with religion or spirituality. Some of the best versions of religion that were able to propagate some of the best things came after the Enlightenment, when we recognized the power of voicing individual interests in cohesion with religion, rather than having them be hierarchical structures where certain individuals, let's say your tribal leader, can use them to domineer all of your own opinions. And then they say, there's new ways to die that come with modernity. I think soap has single-handedly cured more lives, saved more lives than anything you have mentioned. The last thing then is just quickly on OG. I think think much of our material already deals with why it is that the level of happiness that they want to talk about is presupposed by the pain that we talk about. But I think the final thing that is never brought up is just the fact that the feeling of jealousy is inherent to the human condition. Sure, like when I'm on the Sentinel Island, I might not be jealous about someone having a Ferrari, but I might be jealous of the fact that someone is much stronger than me and actually has access to proper resources and social support. I'm very proud to oppose.
Here, here.
Okay, I thank everybody for that great round of debate. Cross the floor, shake hands, and then wait for the delib.